The advice you've been given to save your marriage might be the exact reason your marriage is dying. And I do not mean that as a dramatic opener. I mean it literally. Right? Most common things men are told to do when their wife pulls away, when she goes cold, when she says she's done, those things are not neutral, right? They are actively accelerating their collapse. And the men telling you this advice, not bad people, they're just wrong. My name is Noah Allen, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 3 worst pieces of advice men get when their marriage is in crisis. I'm going to show you exactly why each one fails, and I'm going to show you what is actually happening beneath the surface when your wife pulls away at a level most men never get to see. Because once you understand the real mechanics, once you see what is actually driving her behavior, the bad advice becomes obvious and the path forward becomes clear. So let's get into it. Before we do, if your marriage is in a hard season right now and you're looking for real answers, not just another video, there is a link in the description to book a free consultation call with my team. We also have the Heroic Cousin Method book available directly in the link in the description below or on Amazon. Okay. Both those links are below. All right. So let's talk about the worst advice that men can get. A piece of advice, number 1, that's probably one of the worst, just giving her space. All right. You have heard this one. Maybe your buddy said it. Maybe a family member said it. Maybe you even read it somewhere. The idea is if you just back off, if you give her room to breathe, she will come back to you on her own. She just needs time. Let her process. Let her miss you. And eventually she will come around. And I understand why that sounds reasonable. Because on the surface, it seems respectful. It seems like you're not being pushy. Like you're being a mature adult who knows when to step back. But here is what most men do not understand about why this fails. And it has nothing to do with effort level or whether you love her. It has to do with what safety means to the feminine. A woman, basically, her most fundamental need is emotional safety, not security in the way that you might think about it, like financial security or physical security. I'm talking about something much deeper. She needs to feel like the person standing next to her is actually there, grounded, present, holding steady. Think about what it is like to be on a boat in rough water. When you look over at the person steering, if they look calm, if they look like they have their hand on the wheel and they're handling it, if they're not panicked, you feel okay, even if the water is rough. But if you look over and the person steering is gone, if the wheel is just sitting there spinning, that is the real fear that sets in. Giving her space in a marriage crisis is you walking away from the wheel. It does not feel like respect. It doesn't even feel like maturity. It feels like abandonment. And here's what happens next. And this is part of the bad advice that never accounts for it. The feminine mirrors and multiplies whatever the masculine brings. So when you bring steadiness, she reflects it back, amplified. When you bring panic, she reflects back, amplified. And when you bring absence, she reflects absence back, but amplified. So when you go quiet to give her space, she's going to go colder. When you pull back to let her breathe, she's going to pull back further. And now both of you are in separate rooms with more distance between you than you started. At some point, she starts to think, consciously or not, if he can disappear this easily, maybe I was right to pull away. Because a woman in emotional crisis is not measuring your love by how much space you give her. She's measuring your love by whether you show up, not desperately, not with begging or pressure, but with presence, with grounded, steady, consistent presence. This is the thing that starts to rebuild safety, not absence. Now, I want to tell you about a guy named Kent. Kent came to us about a year ago. He was an executive high performer, led hundreds of people at work. At home, his wife was checked out. She had told him that she was not happy. She had not been happy for a long time. And the first thing Kent did, because a friend told him to, was give her space. He stopped initiating conversations. He stopped checking in on her emotionally. He focused on himself. He hit the gym, worked late, and he thought he was being respectful. He thought he was giving her room to come back. But 3 weeks into it, she'd already started talking to a divorce attorney. because to her, his absence confirmed everything she felt, that he did not care enough to fight, that she was not worth his presence, that she was alone in this marriage, like she had always been. When Kent came to us, that is the first thing we addressed. Not grand gestures or chasing, but presence. Grounded, structured, steady presence that communicated something completely different than what she had been experiencing. And that shift started. Not because he said the right words, but because she started to feel something different. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. But first, let's talk about the second worst advice for men. Advice number 2 is be nicer, do more, and try harder. This one shows up everywhere. Your wife is pulling away, so the obvious answer seems like you need to do more. Buy her flowers, plan a date night, come home earlier, be more helpful around the house, tell her you love her more often. I get it. When something feels broken, the instinct is to try harder. More effort, more love, more everything, right? But here is what actually communicates to an emotional brain of your wife. And I want you to really hear this. When you suddenly shift into high gear, flowers, dates, the extra kindness, after she's already emotionally withdrawn, she does not feel love, she feels pressure. She feels the weight of your anxiety because here is what she knows at a gut level. You're not doing this change because you have changed. You're doing this because you are scared. And those two things feel completely different. One feels like leadership, the other feels like desperation. Think about it this way. Imagine a key person on your team starts to pull away, less engaged, less invested, and you start over complimenting them, throwing extra perks at them, agreeing with everything they say. At first, it looks good, like good management, but then they pick up on something quickly. That shift happened because you are afraid. You're not leading, you're reacting. And people do not follow people who are reacting. In a marriage, this is even more pronounced. The feminine is wired to surrender into strength. She's wired to feel safe with a man who is anchored, a man who does not need her approval to know who he is. When you start people pleasing, when your behavior is driven by what she might think of you, that is the opposite of that anchor. That is a man asking her to hold him up, and she cannot do that. She does not want to do that. Somewhere deep down, she does not want to be the reason you hold yourself together. She wants you to already be together and then invite her into that. The emotional mechanics here come down to something that's called conscious seeds versus subconscious seeds. Conscious seeds is what you say, subconscious seeds is what you do, the energy behind it, the reason underneath it. When you bring her flowers, the subconscious seed is panic. She picks up the panic, not the flowers. When you sit next to her on the couch and the subconscious seed is anxiety about whether she still loves you, she's going to feel that anxiety, not the closeness. Women are extraordinarily attuned to the subconscious seeds. She cannot always name it, she cannot always explain it, but she feels it. And no amount of effort on the surface overrides what she's picking up underneath. That is why men say, I am doing everything right and nothing is working. Because the effort is real, sure, yeah, but the energy underneath the effort is still coming from fear. And fear does not rebuild trust, it deepens distance. Now, let's talk about the third piece of advice. And this is the most dangerous one. Advice number 3 is go to couples therapy. Now, before I go any further, I want to be clear. Therapy in certain forms can be a valuable tool. I'm not here to blanket dismiss every therapist on the planet because I don't know every therapist on the planet. But I want to talk about what happens in couples therapy, specifically when a marriage is already in crisis. When she has already emotionally withdrawn, when she has already started to see you as the problem, because in that context, couples therapy almost always backfires. Here's why. When women walk in to a therapist's office, believing that you're the source of her pain, the model that most couples therapists use is designed to validate feelings. It is a Rogerian style, Carl Rogers style therapy. Most therapy is like this, okay? And one of the core tenements is radical positive reinforcement, right? So what that does, it's basically there to make each person feel heard. And that sounds great in theory, but here's what happens in practice. Her feelings get validated, her narrative gets reinforced, her pain gets legitimized in a control setting where you are sitting across from her, and now that setting has an official stamp on it. It was not just what she was feeling at home, it got confirmed in that room. And then she walks out of that session with more certainty in her story, not less. You walk out confused because you feel like you sat there, try to communicate, try to take accountability, and somehow you're further behind than where you started. And this is not hypothetical. This is what men tell us over and over again. Also, sometimes those therapists might take your side and she's going to feel completely ganged up on, and it doesn't help because you're going to a third party for safety when she needs to be coming to your environment that you build up for safety. One of the men who came through our program had been in couples therapy for almost a year. Every session felt like a structured arena for her to explain everything he had done wrong. And the therapist would validate, nod, reflect, ask him how he felt about what she said. And every time he tried to push back, the energy in the room shifted. So he stopped. He sat there session after session, absorbing a story that he was the reason for all of it. By the time he came to us, he had completely collapsed inward. Not because of what he was actually doing, or he did, but because a year of that environment had stripped him off his frame completely and entirely. Now, here's a deeper problem. Couples therapy operates on the surface. It works with what each person says, what each person brings into the room. But most marriages in crisis are not struggling because of a surface level issue. They're struggling because of bleeding points, emotional wounds that are driving her behavior at a level she herself cannot fully articulate. She might be talking about how you never listen, or how you're always distracted, or even how she felt invisible. But those are symptoms. She's pointing at the tree. But the root system goes much deeper. And there are years of moments where she reached for you and you were not there. Moments where she expressed pain and you minimized it. Moments where she showed you who she was and she felt unseen. That is the wound that is driving everything. A couple of therapists working with you and a couple's therapist working with what you say out loud in a session is not designed to reach that depth. It is like trying to treat a broken bone with a Band-Aid. A treatment has to match the depth of the wound. And that is exactly what the emotional layering protocol is designed to do. Not surface level communication, not talking about the dishes or the schedule, but going beneath the present issue, learning to see the bleeding point underneath, and creating the kind of emotional environment where she can finally feel safe enough to tell you what she has never felt safe to say. That is the real work. And here's something I want to say to every man watching this right now, because I know some of you are sitting there thinking, okay, so I should not give her space, I should not do more, and I should not go to therapy. Then what do I do? And I want to address that directly. What I'm describing is a different orientation entirely. The shift has to happen is not about your tactics, okay? It's about understanding who you are in the relationship to your marriage. Most men in crisis are operating from reactivity. They're scanning her behavior constantly. She is warm today. Does she seem happier? Did she smile when I came home? And their whole internal experience is being driven by what she does. That's not leadership. That is a man who has outsourced his internal state to his wife. And she can feel that outsourcing. She can feel that you're waiting on her signal to know how you are doing. And a woman cannot feel safe with a man whose stability depends on her mood, because on some level, it makes her responsible for holding you together. And that is opposite of safety. The shift that has to happen, and this is the core to everything inside the heroic husband method, is that you stop determining how you show up based on what she's telling you. You do not lead when she is warm. You do not retreat when she is cold. You bring the same man into Tuesday's argument that you brought into Sunday's good morning. That consistency, that grounded, unshakable steadiness is the first thing that starts to crack the ice. Not because she suddenly trusts you, but because it is new data. For the first time, she's seeing something different. And the nervous system does not read words. It does not process your apologies. It definitely does not register your explanations. The nervous system reads patterns. And when you start showing up differently in the exact moments she expected the old version of you, that is where the shift begins. That is where trust starts to rebuild. Not from grand gesture, not from a therapy session, but from a new pattern, repeated consistently over time. Now, here's the part that no one likes to hear because this is what happens, right? Every single time. A man watches a video, he understands everything I just said. He feels clarity for the first time. He goes home, he shows up differently. Day 1, nothing. Day 3, nothing. Day 7, she's still cold. And he starts to think that this is not working. And here's the problem. Understanding the concept does not equal executing the concept. There is a gap between knowing and actually being able to hold it in the hardest moments. Because the hardest moment is not when things are neutral or even positive. The hardest moment is when she says something cruel, when she shuts you out completely, when she questions whether you have changed. And every fiber in you wants to defend, wants to explain, and wants to shut down. Because that is what the old pattern did. And breaking that pattern in real time, in the middle of the storm, that is not something that you do on your own with information from a video. That is something that you build with a structured framework with people around you who have walked this path. This is why the heroic cousin method exists. Not to give you a list of tips, not to just tell you what to say, but to give you a complete leadership system, the emotional layering protocol that walks you through the healing stage, the shifting stage, and the bonding stage. Each one built on the last. Each one designed to meet you at exactly where you are and take you somewhere she can actually feel. The changes you make in your marriage are not just about your marriage. When your kids watch you hold steady instead of crumbling, when they see you repair instead of abandon, they carry that into their own lives. The man that you're becoming in the marriage becomes the model your children use to build their families. That is legacy. And that is why this work matters beyond just you. If you're ready to stop guessing, if you're done with the bad advice and you want real plan, here is what I want you to do. Click the link in the description and book a clarity call with my team. Not a pitch, not a sales presentation. It's a real conversation about your specific situation, where you are, what is driving what you are experiencing, and what the next right steps actually look like. You can also grab the Heroic Cousin Method book. That direct link is below, or go search this up on Amazon. Both links are in the description below. Your marriage is not over because she's cold. It's not over because she said she is done. The advice that you tried didn't work. The advice was wrong. That's all. When a man finally gets the right framework, when he stops reacting and starts leading, things change. I've seen it happen with men in situations far worse than yours. You are not at a time, but you do need to stop following advice that is pointing you in the wrong direction. Start here. I'll see you in the next video.